You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hey, all you music lovers out there, welcome to Modern Musicology. My name is Alan, and here is Rob Levy.
Hey!
And we are joined by a very special friend of ours who you've heard on our show a number of times. This is JM Tuffley.
Dug up for fun. Hi.
Unfortunately, Stephanie and Anthony were not able to be with us when we recorded on the evening of Sunday, April 27. So we thought Sunday, April 27 was the night that the Rock Hall inductees are being announced. So let's just dedicate the show to that. And luckily, Tuffley was available to join us. So it's not just Rob and I yammering at each other like we sometimes do. We have an extra voice joining us.
Flash mob show. Yay.
Exactly. Nice to see you again, Tuff.
Hello.
All right, so the inductees were announced tonight live on American Idol. They did a special Rock Hall show where all the performers did songs that were from Rock Hall inductees. And this year's inductee list has been announced. And the performers are Bad Company, Chubby Checker, Joe Cocker, Cyndi Lauper, Outkast, Soundgarden, White Stripes. Two of the names in the special category of musical influence is Warren Zevon and Salt-N-Pepa. Then there's some other, like the other special categories have been named also, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit also, but we're going to focus for the moment on the performer category. Now, we had a list of 14 inductees going into this, and these 8 plus Warren Zevon and Salt-N-Pepa are our new Rock Hall class for 2025. So we're basically recording this in real time. This announcement just came out about 15 minutes ago as we're recording this. So we haven't talked about it to each other yet. We don't know what we're going to be saying to each other. We've had very little time to absorb this list. So this is going to be a real-time discussion. What are your gentlemen's reactions to these names on this list?
A couple surprises and a couple of it's about times.
Yeah.
A couple curveballs. One that I was, while researching the Rock Hall, completely surprised about. And when I was there a couple weeks ago, digging into some of these people, I learned a lot about them. So there's a couple things there that have thrown me. Overall, I think it's a better list than they've had in recent years.
Except it's a good mix.
The people vote is kind of bizarre, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Fish won the internet, but didn't get in, which I believe is the second time that's happened, because the other band that happened to was Dave Matthews. If I'm not mistaken.
I mean,
the other jam band.
Right. The fan vote doesn't guarantee you getting in. No. It's just, it's basically meaningless. It's just an activity to get people active on the site.
It is essentially a ballot at the end of the day.
Exactly. If there is a tie, then the fan vote counts as one vote. The accumulated fan vote counts as one, and whoever wins that gets that extra vote if they are one of the two tie people.
I'm just seeing the commonality between Fish and Dave Matthews both winning the internet and then not getting in.
Right. I should also note that of those 8 people that are getting in this year, 4 of them are first-time nominees, and those are Bad Company, Chubby Checker, Joe Cocker, and Outkast. This year is the first time that those 4 have been nominated. And it's interesting that for various reasons that each one of those is getting in on their first nominee. First of all, the big news there is that this is the first time Chubby Checker has been nominated. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How can that be possible?
I think that the large problem with that is everybody thinks that he's the twist and the twist again in the cute movies. They don't understand the average person doesn't anyway, that Chubby Checker had 32 hits.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised when I found that out. And just the breadth of his career, sort of the first person to put TV, movies, and music all together. Right. And I think that's kind of interesting at a time when rock and roll is sort of spreading. He's the one who's got the business savvy to say, hey, I want a different picture for, my publicity photos than the album picture and the different things. So I think there's the musical merits of it, but there's also sort of what he brought to the table with that beyond. And also, honestly, he's the last man standing from the rock and roll era now that Jerry Lee Lewis is gone. So, I mean, I don't understand why he wasn't nominated before,
right?
But I think a lot of people just really dismiss the twist.
Maybe so, but even then, I mean, even if he's never been nominated for this entire time, what was it that made him get nominated this year? Like, what was it about 2025 and Chubby Checker that someone finally connected those dots? That's the big mystery for me.
I think everybody else died, so they started to look at him. I mean, that's horribly morbid, but I think that's, I think that the twist is probably one of the 10 great early rock and roll records in terms of just like exploding, right?
Yeah.
And I think that people are starting to look at that period now a little more. And, as they look back to where we are with who's left and who hasn't been in, they're looking, oh, Chubby Checker. Let's look at the Chubby Checker. Oh, wow. Same with Big Mama Thornton. A lot of people now are discovering Big Mama Thornton that hadn't before.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
that's the only thing I can understand.
I think as the pool gets wider, and let's just say less pigmented, shall we say, that people are that the wider pool of people who can actually nominate and throw people into is larger. So not only do you get stuff like, okay, well, we're going to throw Joy Division in and see what happens, but we also go back to, why haven't we done Chubby Checker yet? So you get both of those things.
I guess. I don't know. It just seems so random to me, because sometimes these things will get triggered, by a career retrospective box set or a documentary or a biopic or something like that. Something that's high profile will sort of bring these people back to public consciousness. And I'm not aware of anything like that happened with Chubby Checker in the recent times. So it's still just really curious in my head why. I mean, I'm very glad that it happened, and but it's just so odd to me.
Well, the other thing is, you've got guys like Questlove who are just music
that's true
all around, who are now in the nominating committee going, hey, we didn't do this. What about this? That's kind of what I was getting at. But
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, certainly Quest, because holy fuck, that guy's an encyclopedia.
And he just did the documentary. On Sly Stone, where the archival stuff is going out there anyway. So
yeah.
And on top of that, Chubby Checker's still touring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if enough people go to enough state fairs, the word's going to get out. So
I guess so. State fairs. So what about some of these other folks that are first nominees, first time getting in? I feel like every year you have to have a classic rock component, or the core fans are just going to be complete. I mean, they're dissatisfied every year, but Bad Company is our representative of that era for this year. I've just never been super impressed with Bad Company. I mean, they're a great band. They're a solid band. I don't know, man. I just don't see it. They fall in that category for me of, I mean, there are some classic rock bands that I am a huge, fierce fan of that I don't think should be in the Rock Hall. They're fine. They're great bands. I love them, but I don't think that they are notable to the level of being honored in a Rock Hall.
And I imagine
Bad Company kind of falls in that to me.
And I imagine as the contemporary rock bands thin out, you're going to get that. You're going to get like, oh, we didn't put Bad Company in, and oh, we didn't put Leonard Skinner in, and oh, so that's going to happen. That's going to happen over the next couple of years.
See,
I feel like that's going to be the thing that happens.
Yeah,
Leonard Skinner to me I'm not a big fan of them either, but they're more worthy of this title than Bad Company is to me.
And I'm surprised no one pushed that button yet, because of that would be congruent with the country acts they've been putting in the last couple of years, or
right,
country-oriented acts that they put in the last couple of years,
right?
Which would make, kind of adjacent sense, but
yeah. My fear, well, not fear. My thought is that, I mean, I 100% think Tom Petty should be there at some point. That might happen before Skinnerd, and that seems very weird to me. That seems like you're reversing your cart and your horse.
Well, I think I still think they've got it. The majority of the voting class has people who can vote. I think the majority of the people who can vote still have a thing against the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many bands are still on the table from the 80s.
Yeah.
That aren't even in this conversation yet. And so I think, as long as the older class is still the dominant class, I don't think you're going to get as many 80s bands, and you're not going to get as many kind of the contemporary sort of underground sort of kind of thing. I know Bad Brains snuck in a couple of years ago on the nominated list, the nominee list.
Mm-hmm.
And that was okay. There we go. But I think because you've got, again, a lot of that first wave, that first class that are still around and voting, and they're the dominant voting class. You're going to have folks looking for those for those early acts that still haven't gotten in to go. But B, I think Petty's kind of in a strange place, because he was of that ilk, but just came out a decade later, or broke a decade later. So
right. And I think you're right about that, and I thought that was going to change, because it was just a couple of years ago that we had Eurythmics and Pat Benatar and Duran Duran, and this whole group of people that year felt so different to me than so many of the other inductee classes, that I was like, this is a change. This is a pivot point for the Rock Hall and the kind of acts that they're going to induct. And I don't think it did. No. It was kind of an isolated thing. And the last couple of years hasn't really had anything like that. So it was kind of a weird anomaly.
It also runs in cycles, because you had
true.
You had a couple of years ago, you had going back 10 years, you had the big push to start getting hip hop acts in. And there were multiple hip hop acts in every year for a while there.
Yeah.
And then that was scaled back. And you've had, you've had the kind of, the Cure Nine Inch Nails got in 1 year, and then the Cure got in 1 year, and everybody thought, okay, this is it. We're going to get Jane's Addiction in, and we're going to get New Order in, and we're going to get, and they're, Joy Division and New Order keep getting on the ballot, but we're not seeing kind of any movement.
Yeah.
There, and you sort of take your shots on, okay, who's having the moment, and it probably would have been Jane's Addiction if they hadn't self-destructed last summer. So,
well, yeah,
I think too, circling back to Bad Company, that they're probably looking at them sort of like, look at who's in this band. It's a super group, right? And it has the mystique. That's
true.
And so I'm like, okay, well, if Bad Company's in, are the Wilburys in now? And
they should be.
I mean, so that's one sort of tangent of.
And I don't want that to be the way Tom Petty gets in.
I don't either, but I don't either.
Right.
I want Tom Petty to get in for being.
It's
Tom
all those other guys are in. All those other guys are in now, because I forgot Jeff Lynne got in, but
they're looking at Bad Company. You're like, well, we've got Mott the Hoople and King Crimson.
Yeah,
those guys are in, so I guess we have to put Bad Company in. Is that what this is? I'm just trying to rationalize it, because it doesn't make sense to me, right? They just don't.
There's just some weird kind of hang on things, British bands after 1970 have had a difficult time getting in.
Yeah. Talking about Bad Company, I can kind of see, I mean, I would make a strong case for Paul Rodgers individually being inducted, because not only Bad Company, but you've got Free, and you've got The Firm, and you've got Queen, and you've got a solo career. And I just think that he has had a longevity and an impact that, I mean, Bad Company certainly had an impact without a doubt, but I don't know. It just seems like Paul's individually has been so varied and so wide ranging that I don't know. I would rather see him in as
Yes.
a solo inductee rather than. I mean, there's nothing wrong with. I'm going to get myself in so much trouble.
No,
with
no, no. I
classic
don't
rock
think you
fans.
are. I also think that there is a merit for the Rock Hall of like people that are individual musicians
Yeah.
that have been in different groups that don't
Yeah.
really get their full due. And I think that's something they need to. That is an area that I was going to bring up that they need to work on. And I was actually going to make this very point because you look at Paul Rodgers and just the breadth of work across decades of, you know, not like you just looked at what bands he's been in, who's he been with, right? But we haven't even touched who has he influenced?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And I would argue how many of those people were influenced by Paul Rodgers versus how many people have really been influenced by Bad Company.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking, you know? But again, I'm not here to disparage Bad Company. They're a great band. They are seriously a great band.
Yeah, I think some of it's appeasement though for a certain generation too. They're trying to get they're trying to get every group, every sort of generation. They're trying to throw them a lifeline.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And I mean, if they're going to do that, then by God, it is way past time for Iron Maiden.
Yes.
Oh my God. They're almost as bad. I'm just going to say it. They're almost as bad as Warren Zevon. And thank God Warren Zevon has finally been inducted this year. I mean, that is ridiculous how long this has taken and how many times he's been overlooked and how long he's been eligible. And not mainly as a performer, but as a songwriter, how fucking influential he has been. And it is about time.
You know, when I was at the Rock Hall about a month ago, they have the little people that roam around and sort of make sure. And, you know, a very nice person came and said, "Oh, you enjoying everything?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, because I think they noticed I was, you know, on hour 5 or something. And they're like, "Oh, are you enjoying it?" Yeah. It's like, "Is there anybody you'd like to see?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Warren friggin' Zevon." And he's kind of looked like taken aback, right?
Like looking at their watch going, okay.
Well, the people that work, you know, in that little CBGB's area versus the people that work in the archives are different, you know, but
yeah, totally.
But she was like, we get this a lot, you know,
I'll bet.
You know, and
well, don't they have the thing in-house where you can kind of do your own in-house vote where they have a daily stat of like who of the people visiting that day, who they wanted in?
Yes.
Okay.
But, you know, that day Fish was winning.
Right.
Oasis had like 3 votes. Yeah, I think that as an artist and as a songwriter, Warren Zevon's time was like 6 years ago. I don't know how many years he's been on the ballot, but 6 or 7 years ago he should have been in. And it's one of the sort of downfalls of the Rock Hall is that every year somebody deserving gets pushed out, and he just has always been the guy, right? He's like the last guy picked in kickball every year, and it's like, come on, he's Warren Zevon, you know?
Yeah.
And the influence of Warren Zevon, especially now, you know, I hate to say posthumously, but his stature since he passed away has only intensified. And people are reevaluating his career and everything. And I'm just, that's the one I'm probably super excited about. One of the ones I'm excited about the most.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, he is, and I knew this was going to happen. He was inducted not by the nominations, but he was placed in by one of those special committees. And so he's placed in on the musical influence tab, which I knew, just like Kate Bush, if she's ever going to get in, that's how it's going to happen. And she did. Yes, I know. I'm saying that was my argument up to that point. But yeah, Warren, I knew that. I mean, as many times as he has been overlooked, he was going to finally ever get placed by one of those special interest groups. And thank goodness they've finally done that. It's ridiculous. But, you know, interestingly, he is placed in at the same time as, and we're jumping ahead to musical influence, but placed in at the same time as Salt-N-Pepa. That's interesting to me. That is, I did not see that coming at all.
I'm surprised that they didn't go with, I mean, considering that Joy Division and New Order have been on the list a couple of times, they typically use that category to get people out of the endless cycle, and Salt-N-Pepa haven't actually appeared on a nominee list.
I don't think they have.
So it's a bit strange that they do that with an act. I think Big Mama Thornton wasn't on a nominee list. I think maybe she appeared once. So I think this is not a precedent, but yeah, it's a bit weird that they don't pull somebody that isn't already on the nominee list
Right.
for this category.
And I think that Salt-N-Pepa are phenomenal. I
Yeah.
think they are hugely important. I think they're hugely influential. But I would just say that Joy Division and New Order, this is what should have happened.
Well,
Yeah.
in
Not
terms
to
of
take, not to take anything away from Salt-N-Pepa.
Yeah.
I'm not. But that Joy Division and New Order have been on the nomination list for I don't know how long now, and should be in for basically launching a whole new subgenre of music, and they should be there.
I think in terms of female rappers, I'd probably do Latifah or MC Light first, but
Yeah.
But they weren't a group.
but they weren't a group. That's the thing. Also, I think currently they're together right now. So they've been arguing back and forth a couple of times over the years, but I think they are actually together at the moment. So I guess that might have had something to do with it, but who knows?
I mean, I am happy for them that they got in, and part of me thinks that they deserve to get in, but I think they deserve to get in later rather than now.
Yeah,
and
because I don't think the time between when they performed and their legacy has been long enough to really digest that. That doesn't mean they didn't contribute. That doesn't mean they did anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you look at, you look at Soundgarden and the White Stripes, their impact in a relatively shorter amount of time is far more than Salt-N-Pepa in a very short amount of time. Right now. So that's part of it. And really, I mean, we haven't seen a dirge of female rap groups still coming because of Salt-N-Pepa.
I don't think you've had a dirge of female rappers, but I think you've had and you can see it in
groups,
like SZA or even like SZA or Megan Thee Stallion and a couple of the solo acts that have come through the last couple of years are heavily influenced by Salt-N-Pepa, not just Salt-N-Pepa, but them particularly, and like Latifah and Light, and so I could definitely see it. I was just that was a bit out of left field, but okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Here's my question though. For this nomination, for this induction, is it going to be Salt-N-Pepa and Spinderella?
Thank you. Yes, Spinderella needs to be in.
Just the two of them. That's what I'm really curious to know. I want to know.
Influence, so
yeah, exactly.
Who knows? And
it has to be the three of them.
Their producer, the producer guy that was part of the story and sort of kicked to the curb. Is he anywhere in this at all? Do we know?
I don't know. I doubt it.
I mean, Spinderella, you talk about a DJ as a beast, right? I mean, regardless of gender, regardless of anything, Spinderella was a hell of a DJ.
Yeah.
And Spinderella is the backbone of that band.
Yep.
Recorded
until she wasn't.
But they didn't really. What did they do after that?
Well, sure. Okay. We were talking about Paul Rodgers and Bad Company. Here's my thoughts on White Stripes. White Stripes are hugely important and influential. I don't know that it should have happened first, but I'm 100% certain that at some point Jack White is going to be in as an individual performer because of all the things that he has done outside of just White Stripes. And I don't know. I mean, White Stripes is basically him, so I could almost see him going in this year instead of White Stripes, it being him recognizing his enormous career and influence and the way he has progressed rock music. And I think he is 100% deserving.
Yeah.
And White Stripes being their part of
I think it's the timing.
I think it is too.
I think it's White Stripes put out their first record in 97?
Yeah.
Maybe 98. There's an indie release in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's how you do that, because he didn't put his first solo record out until what?
I understand, but
2000,
he did other things too. Yeah, I know. I get it. I totally get it. I do think he'll get.
They do that by releases, or they'll do it by sidemen, and he's not a sideman, so that's. Totally. I'm curious to know if Meg's going to show up.
Meg will show up.
Oh, she will.
Meg will show up because I think they're on terms. They've been seen.
No, they're on good terms, but I'm like, I know she's also feel kind of anxious in public, so that was
But
why
I think,
the anxiety was why there is no more white stripes. So
I mean, I think
Yeah.
where this gets interesting too is that, you know, people forget that a lot of the arrangements on some of those first couple records, he was mostly the lyrics and the arrangement, and she was like coming up with the initial melodies. And I mean, it was very much sort of a riffing off of each other. And in terms of being a drummer, a female drummer, I mean, she's no Stephanie Seymour, but at the time, indie rock did not have female drummers at that time. So that probably is one conjecting to part of it too. You know,
especially in an act that doesn't have a bassist.
Yeah.
But
So
also
that drum beat has to be there.
Yeah.
It has to be there, and it has to be important.
And I think the other thing that's interesting too is that sort of like they project, it's in the same way that Chubby Checker did. They sort of projected this whole image.
Yeah.
That sort of brought about the you know, the sleazecore movement, I guess is what they call it now. The kids call it, of the late 90s and early 2000s. They sort of had this whole image. They had this whole distilled art Mondrian thing going on.
Yeah.
And I think she had a lot more to say with the visual aspects of the band.
Yeah, maybe.
Initially. I mean, it is, you know, probably 60-40 or higher Jack White.
Yeah.
You know, and if anyone's responsible, they're half responsible for like bringing garage rock back as a conversation.
Sure.
It's like them and the Hives.
Sure.
Like, if you don't have the White Stripes and the Hives, people don't go back and look at the Sonics.
And now do you put the Strokes in?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the impact of the White Stripes is far deeper than the Strokes.
Yes.
Agreed.
But I think, you know, this is going to open up these kind of conversations now, because they're starting to look at the early 2000s in the same kind of way that they're looking at the 1980s.
I mean, it's 2025. That means the year 2000 is now eligible. That blows my damn mind.
Yes.
You know, when Chubby Checker's never been nominated, but now we can put people in from the year 2000. That is crazy. Okay. Any thoughts about Joe Cocker? I'm surprised he's not been nominated before this year.
I'm not as surprised that he didn't get nominated before. They're weird about people who just interpret songs.
I agreed.
They're weird about, you got to write it and you got to play on it. And you gotta,
Sure.
You know, they're very particular about bands. They're very particular about artists. They're not so keen. They've only become really keen in the last couple of years about putting in people who can really interpret songs. Like, we didn't really get to that until like maybe Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
So like putting in people who don't really contribute to the material but can interpret songs. So I think that's an interesting.
Except for people like Diana Ross.
Yeah.
And separately the Supremes and the Stylistics and people like that who aren't songwriters.
But I think in that case, I think the Motown acts are considered sort of differently.
Oh, I agree with you. I think they are.
Yes.
Sort of part of the factory, and they're sort of cogs,
Right.
sort of cogs in the wheel.
Yes.
And especially in the early years, you know, and that was the important part of, we're putting in rock guys, but we're also putting in Motown.
Yeah.
From the gate, so that we define, okay, this is what this is going to be.
I agree with you 100%.
Yes.
That. Yes. Totally.
But I think it just in terms of people who just interpret songs and bring their own sort of things into songs, but don't necessarily write their own songs.
Right.
Like, Joe Cocker is not necessarily known for writing songs.
No.
He's known for interpreting songs that other people have written. So
yeah. I also wonder how much of this is the fact that they are about to open a massive exhibition on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Music. And
look, the Rock Hall is?
Yes.
Are you fucking kidding?
Yeah, there's a whole thing coming on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my God, I have to be there every single day that thing is.
I thought I told you about this.
You did not tell me this. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
That was the other part of the 50th anniversary stuff that there's a whole slew of 50th stuff that got announced.
Yeah.
Like the Questlove documentary, and then and I think there's a showing of the Questlove documentary that they're going to do at the Rock Hall at some point.
Probably so.
I've heard that they're going to do that.
I'm wondering how much of this sort of ties in with that conveniently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
And it might just be that, you know, there's such a, I look at Joe Cocker the same way I look at Jimmy Buffett, and it's just sort of, there's such a buzz around who they are rather than their music.
Well, Jimmy Buffett at least wrote all his own stuff.
Yeah, I
Jimmy
know.
Buffett wrote his own stuff, but the unique thing about Joe Cocker is he can take someone else's song and interpret the hell out of it.
Yes.
And, again, it's on that level of, the same thing that Whitney Houston does. She'll take somebody else's song and make it something else.
But he also, too, I think, as best as I understand this from talking to a friend of mine when Joe Cocker was sort of talking about being nominated, that I was not really super familiar with him outside of the purview of, normal. Joe Cocker apparently was renowned for just being phenomenal live. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if, how much of the live show gets in. I don't know. I know. I'm just looking.
I know.
We're
There's
reaching
also
here,
the
Woodstock set. I mean, everybody thinks about the Woodstock set when they think of him. So, there's that.
Yeah.
I think he's one of isn't he one of the few Woodstock artists that haven't gotten in yet?
That might be it too. Yeah.
Him and Country Joe Fish.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, that's it. Next year, I want Country Joe Fish and Joe.
They could have. You know what? Here's the thing: as much fact checking that happens, they could have snuck him in with one of the Cure members.
I'm going to start a.
He would have been fine.
I'm going to start right now a campaign to get Discotheques and the Sexolettes in.
There you go.
That's
Hell it. Yes.
And Wayne Jane. I'm in. I'm on. This is my.
Let's see. Outkast.
About time.
Yes, but also Tribe should have been first.
Tribe was first.
Tribe was first. Was Tribe in already, or
Tribe's in? Tribe went in last year.
Okay, for some reason I thought Tribe was going in this year.
Yes, they got nominated a couple of times and didn't get in, and then they got placed in, I think.
And I imagine this is for what, the Stankonia anniversary? The Stankonia anniversary.
No, maybe their first album came out in '94. I don't remember.
Yeah, they've been eligible for quite
a
some
while.
time.
Yeah,
But I figured, but I thought, okay, they're not going to really
actually. Stankonia came out in 2000.
Yeah. So I figured this is because sometimes they do it on a particular band's and a particular album's anniversary, not necessarily when the act is eligible.
Yeah.
Totally, completely eligible and deserving.
Yeah.
Also, in the same way that you look at them, the amount of side projects that just Big Boy has done on his own is pretty exhausting.
You've got Andre's jazz album last year.
Andre's jazz album. So when you take that component into it, and pretty much everyone within a certain generation, was influenced by them. And also, honestly, at a time when hip hop was sort of not crossing over to white audiences in the way that what used to be, along came Outkast, and all of a sudden it's back again.
Yeah.
Well, and you've also got things like the level of sources and influence that they draw into what they do. Like, Hey Ya. Did you know Hey Ya was written by Andre after he had done after he was listening to a lot of the Smiths?
Yeah.
That's insane. It's like, really, you came up with that from your marathon listening to the Smiths.
And cool. I am just fascinated by the Big Boy Kate Bush. Is just one of the And he talked, when he played the Music at the Intersection Festival here, he was talking in interviews about Kate Bush, just unprompted, and it was just like,
Apparently, he's sitting on something that they recorded.
Yeah.
Which is what he mentioned in his induction speech a couple of years ago. That, hey, Kate, if you're watching, can you maybe call me about releasing the stuff we did? Because that would be nice. You do that.
But it would be nice for both of them.
Also too is some of these artists are getting in because they help build a scene, right? And they built a whole movement. Oh yeah.
100%.
I mean, it's half the city is them and Jermaine Dupri at one point. So
that's right.
It was them, and it was the Dungeon Family and So Deaths.
Okay, so how about she's been nominated before but got in this year, and honestly, I kind of felt like when the list came out, I was like, this is her year, and that's Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she's not been in before now, but I kind of felt like this year it was like there was no doubt in my mind it was going to happen.
Farewell tour, documentary,
right?
TV commercials that air all the time, and a huge record.
I think Chapel Row name dropped her at least 4 times.
Yeah, and a huge record for activism.
Yep.
But here's the thing.
I think
I don't know
Chapel and Charlie XCX both.
Charlie, yeah, true. Yeah, that's true. But here's my thing. This just occurred to me. Like I wasn't planning on even bringing this up, but she has been on the ballot before, and she got in this year. And you know who was on the ballot before and didn't get in and was not nominated again this year, and that is Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
And I am still shocked that the year that she was nominated, she didn't get in that year. But here we are. She'll get in at some point. I have no doubt about that.
At some point, I think, when everyone she's pissed off is no longer involved in the Rock Hall.
That's sometimes the way it happens.
Yeah. So,
I mean, there's plenty of artists who have stories about Jan Wenner saying to them, as long as I'm involved in the Rock Hall, you will never get in. And the year he, stepped away from, whether he resigned or whether they kicked him out of the inner committee.
Was that when ABBA got in? Because there was ABBA one year and then Kiss the next.
No, he was ousted, allegedly.
Yeah.
And the following year, Carly Simon got in, and he's one of the people that he told that to. And I was like, there you go, buddy. Screw you.
But I kind of seem like Sinead. Well, she did have a little. Not that she intended to, maybe not completely, but there were quite a few. The list is quite long for Sinead's list.
Sinead,
well, yeah, she's a contentious character. That's no doubt about that.
And she is one of those people that I believe if she was alive and was nominated, she would probably kick up her feet and say, "No, I don't want it."
Yeah.
That's very likely.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's her prerogative.
But
okay, so anyway, back to Cyndi. Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on the side.
Yeah. Cyndi is again, like, when most of your current female pop stars are like name dropping her as a direct influence, that's gonna get you in.
Yeah, the first time I saw Chapel Roan, I'm like, oh, this is Cyndi Lauper.
Yep.
Yeah. It feels like Cyndi Lauper all over again in terms of just like people dressing up like her, the people that come out to the concerts, the vibe around her.
Just the variety of influences that kind of go into what she's putting out. It's like 1 minute she's doing a complete pop song, and the next minute she's putting out a country record.
Right, and then she does a Broadway musical, and I mean, she is, she's unstoppable.
Yeah,
I'm 100% like I was on board with her getting in this year, and I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
Another one that I thought might make it in this year and didn't is Billy Idol on the nomination, and I think this was his first year getting nominated as well.
He's kind of
yes, he had been. This is his first year nominated, and he didn't make it in, and I'm kind of surprised by that. But at the same time, if it's like between those two, Cyndi would have made it in my vote, and not him. You know what I mean?
He's kind of got a big sort of push record coming out pretty soon.
Yes, he does. Yes,
and he's got kind of a big tour going on pretty soon. So I would not be surprised if he's back in the list next year. Because he's kind of making a push and kind of out there a lot right now. So
and you can honor punk without having all the punk attitude.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so true.
And I understand, because they have talked about it. Like, if he does actually go in, it's like him and Steve Stevens are both going to go in.
Sure.
Under that, the same way that they've done that with a couple of other people. Like him and Steve Stevens are probably both going to get in, which is nice.
Yes, I agree. We mentioned them earlier, but Oasis. I was certain Oasis was going to go in this year. I was like, there was no doubt in my mind that they're happening this year.
There's not enough of their contemporaries that are there yet.
Yeah, but
and the problem with that is, again, it goes back to the current British band thing, or the contemporary British band thing. That they have. There's like British bands after, like I said, British bands after 1970 have really hard times getting voted in.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's sort of the stigma of like the older guys going, yeah, they're just doing us. So that's part of it.
I think them doing a tour that's coming, and that just being a global event is going to really propel them a lot.
I think they'll be back next year too.
I think a lot of people voting this year,
yeah,
probably don't have a common memory of Oasis.
Yeah,
because it was not in terms of staying power. You know, Radiohead got in because they got the longevity, and sort of they're known as kind of being out there, and you know, but
Oasis, at the time they were still an ongoing thing.
Yeah,
and Oasis was not.
And Oasis is a balls to the wall rock band, and yes, you can say they sound like a lot of other people, but I think that they flamed out a little too early for people to say, oh, you know, I think in their head they have to be like name recognition and then longevity. And I think the longer we get away from this, the more the longevity becomes less of a thing.
Yeah.
But if you're putting the White Stripes in for such a short amount of time, and you need to put Oasis in for that as well.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. And when you think about somebody like Sex Pistols,
yeah,
there is zero longevity.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact 100% is there, but longevity isn't always necessly.
And the Damned need to
and the Damned,
the Damned, yeah. But again, you know, a lot of there are still a lot of the groundling punk bands that are not there yet.
Or rock. There's not a lot of rockabilly either.
No, and you know,
true.
We're gonna have this conversation about Stray Cats at some point. So,
oh yeah, and big bad voodoo daddies.
Well,
Squirrel Nut Zippers are getting in before them.
Squirrel Nut Zippers, man.
You could even go Rockpile or something, but you know,
true.
They have less of a chance of getting in than something like Stray Cats. So
or Kicks.
Yeah.
Kicks. Oh Jesus. Oh my gosh. I mean, who have we not talked about yet?
So I wanted to bring up Soundgarden.
Soundgarden.
Okay.
So I think Soundgarden is sort of the last of the grunge bands, and I think this is going to be it because Pearl Jam and Nirvana are in.
Yeah,
Soundgarden's in. You're not going to put Tad in. You know, you're not going to put in the Melvins, although they should. You know, you're not going to put in Mudhoney, right? This is it for grunge, and I think a lot of this is for Cornell's stature sort of posthumously just rising, and people looking at him as a songwriter. I mean, the thing about Soundgarden is that voice is so distinctive than any other band. And just that in many ways they are tighter musically than Nirvana or Pearl Jam were, just in terms of like.
And they were first.
Yeah, and they were sort of the afterthought for many people in that whole grunge movement, which is kind of not really fair. Although if Nirvana would have been around longer, they would have done a Bond theme. It's inevitable. But you know, I can't imagine you talking about the 90s and putting bands in without talking about them.
Right.
And also, you know, the slam dunk performance is the three of them and Brandi Carlile. Because they've already done it.
Yes. Absolutely.
The slam dunk performance is the three of them and Brandi Carlile.
100%. Dude.
I imagine the feelers have already gone out for that.
You know what? That didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
All this time we've been talking about exactly.
She did.
She did Black Hole Sun, and it's fucking amazing.
Yes. Well, she did the EP with what the Rooster says. She did the EP with those guys, and they re-recorded a couple of songs. So
yeah.
I mean, there's always the constant thing of like she wants to go out with them. She wants to like tour with them. So
yes, there's also the constant thing of how in this era you cannot. It is against the law to produce any kind of award show without her being involved somehow. And this is the way that she's going to be involved this year.
This is more natural than some of them.
Exactly. It's not going to be forced. This has precedent.
You might actually want to do this one.
But this is sort of the nod to loud rock.
Yes.
Sort of, you know.
Like,
sure.
You know, like were they metal? Were they grunge? Were they, you know, a lot of, you know, because they weren't when you think of whatever the hell grunge sounded like.
Yeah.
It wasn't Soundgarden, especially if you go back to the earlier, like the Sub Pop or even like the first couple albums. Like they're a metal band.
Oh, totally. Yeah. 100%.
They are, but they sort of got lumped in. And this is where I think this is part of the reason why I'm happy.
Because Chris knew everybody in that scene. So that's how
I mean, I think, you know, they sort of got where they were from and the time they were in, they sort of got thrown into being a grunge band. So this is sort of like, I mean, I use the word grunge to sort of use their labeling, but I'm not sure they're proper grunge. I'm not sure they're proper metal. They're just kind of their
Like
own.
Alice in Chains got lumped into there for like 5 seconds.
I look at them
They're
as
a
sort
metal
of
band.
being in their own little thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think of
who also should be nominated at some point.
But when we look at like, you know, the college radio landscape of who they considered grunge and all of the marketing stuff, that they were sort of it, man. And when they were working that first record, A&M, back when A&M had college reps, when they were working that record, they were saying these guys have been at it longer than Nirvana. They've been, you know, and I could get the guys at the radio station that were metal guys or like hard rock guys or like old school classic rock guys. I could get them to play Soundgarden.
It's like of the songwriters of that kind of generation, right?
Oh my God.
You've got Chris Cornell, you've got Cobain, you've got Mark Lanigan, who I could see them throwing in as an influence.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes.
Maybe not like any of his bands, but I could see them, you know, putting Mark Lanigan in there at some point, because you've got to have all three of them in there at some point.
Yeah.
So,
I would put, you know, Cornell in as a songwriter ahead of like Billy Corgan or any of those people sort of in that camp. So I'm okay with this. Not that they need my okay. You know, they're going to wake up tomorrow.
Oh, well, Rob said it was fine. We're good now. All right. Good to go. Let's do that ceremony now.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? I think we've covered most all of the
main folks. Yeah. So we don't know about the special categories yet, other than the two for.
Yeah, we have one that I'm excited about. Carol Kaye is in the Musical Excellence Award. And you talk about a legendary, nobody other than musicians really knows who this is, because she's a session musician. She has played with every person on the planet. She is one of the best bass players to ever have worked in popular music. She is a phenomenon. And Carol Kaye, man, she is getting in this year in the Musical Excellence Award category. And I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
I think she's going in with Thom Bell and Nicky Hopkins, it says here, too.
Yep. So that's great. She was a member of the Wrecking Crew. She played on Richie Valens' La Bamba guitar. She's mostly known as a bass player, but she has played with everybody. The Ahmet Ertegun Award is going to Lenny Waronker, record producer turned music executive, served as Warner Brothers president for much of the 1980s and 1990s, leading the label out of an industry-wide slump by bolstering the careers of artists like Talking Heads, ZZ Top, and Madonna.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Mostly through the acquisition of Sire Records. So yes.
Oh yeah, totally. That's pretty much the list.
It'll be interesting. Is it still going to be? I imagine because of the American Idol connection that this is going to do that they're going to do the Disney Plus thing again for the ceremony.
As far as I know, yes.
Yes.
Disney still has the contract for that. Yes. And this year it is it's not back in LA. Is it New York this year?
It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, because it rotates between their LA and
Cleveland.
Cleveland, not Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And I wanted to go this past year when it was at Cleveland so I could go to the hall and enjoy all the stuff that goes along with it. But I didn't get to. I'll get there one year. Maybe next time it's in Cleveland, it'll be like some acts that I'm super excited about, and like all the stars will align.
Yeah. The list it's a pretty fair mix.
It is, yes.
Like Rob says, I think it's kind of the mixiest mix they've had in a while. And the variety's good, and I don't think anybody can out and out complain about it, although people do.
Oh, they will.
Why is Outkast there? Because they did it.
Exactly.
But it's a good mix. It also, and I think we sort of talked about this in the pre-show, it also sort of dodges the bullet of, do we have to nominate any of the pop acts? Because Mariah Carey didn't make the list.
Yeah, we should talk about that. I mean, I'm okay with that.
I'm very okay with that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't feel that one.
I have this thing where I could make a really good case for Mariah, but it's sort of like you're also arguing against a tree that is topped with a star. That is the Christmas song, which is her biggest hit now, and that's kind of scary.
It's also annoyed enough people that it might detract from
yeah. But again, like and what we were talking about with Bad Company, like as the rock bands kind of thin out for a while, because what's the next rock band in the 2000s? Who's that? Who's the next big rock band in the 2000s? What is that? Maroon 5? Is that even close?
I mean,
what we're thinking?
Yeah, that's probably it. But no, I just don't
Train?
see that at all.
Come on.
No, not Train, definitely. Yeah.
But as these, as we, thin out, we're either going to be looking back to the Lynyrd Skynyrd's and the like that we haven't pulled back out.
Oh, yeah.
Or we're going to have to deal with, like, that first Beyonce solo record doesn't come out until 2009. So,
yeah,
you're either going to have to put Destiny's Child in, or you're going to have to wait.
Right.
Here's a question. Are we a big hall or a small hall people then? Do we want a smaller nominating class going forward each year, or do we want everything?
Well,
this is not as big a class as we've had in some recent previous years.
I think some of that has to do with the voting.
Yeah.
They've mentioned that there have been some really close ballots in the last couple of years, which is why they let more people in. But that is also why they've done the thing where they add people they do additional musical influence awards.
Yeah.
Because these things have been so close the last couple of years. So maybe this list wasn't.
Right.
Maybe the nominating committee puts together a slam dunk list where there are very clearly people out ahead that the voters look at and go, clearly these people should be here. That's who we're going with. It depends on what they come up with in the nominating list, I suppose. If there are a lot of close calls, or if there are a lot of, if there are multiple female artists, do they steal each other's votes? If there are multiple alternative acts, do they steal each other's votes? We had years where The Cure and Jane's Addiction were on a ballot together, and neither one of them got in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I imagine somebody's going to take a swing at the replacements again. Somebody's going to take a swing at Husker Du at some point. That's going to happen.
Right.
It's going to require more of those bands of those ilk to actually be there to vote for it. Because always the thing I'm thinking in the back of my head is when I look at these things, and we've talked about this before, is, I'm still thinking who's Keith Richards going to vote for? Like, and that's kind of, we've never moved from that. We've never moved from, like, who's Keith Richards voting for? Because that's the dominant kind of area that's still in. Because, as some of the 80s acts do get in, they don't participate as much. Like, we don't know if the guys from U2 actually vote. So
right. So that is this year's list of Rock Hall inductees. I'm sure we'll do another show in November when the induction ceremony happens and we talk about the performances and all that stuff, because that's kind of an annual tradition for us. So check back in then. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another one. We're going to take a really quick break right here, and then we're going to be back to wrap up our show with our picks of the week. So don't go anywhere.
All right, monkeying around, start talking.
Mr. Bobalina, Mr. Bob Bobalina,
calling
Mr. Bobalina,
Alameda.
About your podcast.
We talk about an Emmy-winning comedy series.
We talk about a band who outsold the Beatles and the Stones in 1967.
Still sticking to that story, huh? Well, if you know what's good for you, you'll change your tune.
We talk about a groundbreaking multimedia project
that inspired generations of artists and fans.
All right, throw the book at them.
This book is overdue.
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
All right, we are back, and we got some picks of the week. Now, Tuffley, you and I were at a same show just a couple of nights ago.
We got what? Chastain Park, sir.
That's right. We were there for Alison Krauss and Union Station.
Yep.
Now, I've seen Alison twice before, but I've never seen Union Station. So this was my first time seeing that show, and they have a new album out.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't because they haven't toured in 14 years.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm not like a massive fan. I don't know a lot of the songs. I was just there to listen to whatever they played for me. I recognize some, but not a lot. But just the musicianship on that stage is just off the chart.
Like, honestly, a lot of people come through the door with Alison Krauss and Union Station through the Oh Brother Where Art Thou door. That is the gateway, because Jerry Douglas and several members of Union Station separately and Allison contributed heavily to that record, to that soundtrack.
Yep.
And that's how people get in the door.
Sure.
And a lot of people have, obviously seen her with Robert Plant the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because she's been hanging out with, Plant and Dylan and all that, all those people. So she's got a wider influence, and she's been doing a solo thing where she's been, doing various sorts of albums. But it's nice to see them come back together. And I don't know if this is the last record. I've heard this is the last record. I've heard this is the last tour from some of the merch. I really hope they reschedule that date, because I'd like to see the rest of the show. But,
I think, and so we had a really bad weather prediction for that evening. It was 99% rain for 2 hours from 9 to 11. And we got halfway through the show before the rain started, and it started kind of slow as a little bit of a sprinkle. And I thought, it's not going to be that bad.
And we got to Jerry Douglas's solo part of the show. And then it started raining. That's so bad.
So the second half of the show got canceled. I think they would only reschedule if the whole show got scrubbed.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to get a reschedule.
Yeah.
We should get a half refund if nothing else.
Refund. But yeah, I keep hearing that some of the tour merch and some of the stuff that this could be the last time that Allison and Union Station go out. They're probably still going to do records, but I don't know if they're going to tour. Is basically I think how that's going to work. But we'll see. Yeah. They were fun, and Arcadia is a good record. So
go
check out that not quite noise, but noise.
So Tuff, what else do you have? Do you have any other picks from this week?
I've been kind of diving into, my wife has kind of gone down the metal rabbit hole, so I've rediscovered a lot of Judas Priest.
Yes.
We're gonna go see them in Alice Cooper in September when it comes here.
Starring Anthony Williams, right?
Have you heard that new Alice Cooper song?
I haven't heard the new one, but it's the original band, right?
Yes, it is.
The original Alice Cooper band. So
yes.
That's I don't know if that's who he's touring with, though. I don't know if he's touring with the original band when they go out with Priest or not, but
I think so. And that new song is called Black Mamba, and it's really cool. I dig it.
But I've been going through the Priest archives, sort of, and currently I'm on Painkiller, so I'll throw Painkiller out there as
oh man, that's a good one.
Sample.
Hell yeah.
I guess the other thing that I've been listening to lately is the new Lucy Dacus album, which is called Feelings, Forever Feelings or something like that. I think that's the name of it. But it's very good. It's very low key, so it's kind of a good weird mix between the bluegrass I've been listening to and the specific speed of the Painkiller record. Kind of warm up, cool down. You know what I mean?
There you go.
There we go.
That's the way to balance it. I got to say, man, before we get to Rob's, and this actually isn't a pick of the week because I haven't heard it yet, but I just learned yesterday that one of my favorite current artists, Japanese Breakfast, put out a new record a month ago, and I had no idea. So I am super excited to listen to this, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about it on our next show. But so I'm super excited.
She's apparently working on another video game soundtrack, so that'll be cool.
Oh, cool. All right, Rob, what you got?
I didn't go to quite as much of a musical fun thing as you guys did. I went and saw Ocean Blue. They are touring on their first two records. They were, in case you want to know, kids, they came along in 1989, and they were still in high school out of Hershey, Pennsylvania. And they toured with like the Mighty Lemon Drops and John Wesley Harding, and they just kind of realized, radio's not the way to do it. We're going to play universities and all ages clubs. And that's how they built their record up. But those first two records they did are sort of like laid the foundation in the 90s for some of the stuff that would come later. Like, Imagine the Smiths were the Singers Happy, but they were absolutely friggin' incredible. And I love it when you go see a band and the singer or somebody in the bands tells the stories of the songs or related to them. And he talked about like how they got, one of the reasons why Ballerina Out of Control happened is because when they signed with Warner, everybody at the label took them out to go see Nitzerev that night. And they were at some goth club in LA, and there was a woman in a ballet outfit that was all shredded stuff, just like moshing around. And he thought, and somebody said, "Oh, it's a Ballerina Out of Control." He goes, "Oh, that's a song title."
Yeah, totally.
So you never would have known that. And he talks about like Michael Stipe gave him this great advice. He's like, he was outside the tour bus, and this guy says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he goes, "I'm kind of tired." And he turns around, it was Michael Stipe, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not too tired for you." And so he said, Stipe said, "Don't ever explain what your songs are about to people, because then their image and their thoughts of it are gone." And so these really like cool, insightful things. And I love a concert experience like that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I've got a very short list, but I'm going to start with the Open Flames, same time next year. And this band has our friends Evan and Paige from Sleepy Kitty, and it's one of their like 500 new musical projects that they're doing. And otherwise, most of the other band guys are English, and it's kind of a cross between like Galaxy 500, our early REM, and Husker Du. It's quite different for them, but UK subs, our UK Trains is actually really great off of that. To recommend that record. Also, if you are a fan of shoegaze, and this is a great time to be listening to all that stuff, because like it's exploding. I've discovered a band this week called Photo Form, and Grief is a Garden is the album, and it's like just fantastic. I love it. It's like dreamy and ethereal, and it's like a really crunchy beach house kind of sound. And Mickey Brenny, formerly of Lush, with the Mickey Brenny Trio and Tripla. So if you're a fan of that like 90s 480 and Lush kind of stuff, that it's fantastic. And then the last record I'm going to recommend is a band called the Scaramanga Six, and they're British, and one of them owns a hotel now because their record career is, so incredibly great. They bought a small hotel, and
the Libertines guys bought a hotel too.
Yeah, and so they're sort of very tongue in cheek. They wrote a whole record once about dinosaurs and stuff, and so they're really fun and they're good guys. So I wanted to recommend that as well. And the Led Zeppelin documentary, if you haven't seen it yet, is
I still haven't.
Amazing. And lastly, Pink Floyd and Pompeii.
Jeez. I was about to say,
sweet effing Jesus! Wow.
Also, Sinners. Go see Sinners.
I haven't seen it yet. That's on my list.
That's a killer soundtrack too. Both the score and the songs.
Okay.
Both of them, because Ludwig Göransson does the score, and then the song soundtrack is just all blues stuff.
Nice.
Some of it's been re-recorded. Some of it's by the actors in the film, and then some of it's been re-recorded. Brittany Howard is one of the folks that re-recorded some things.
Cool.
So,
and I'm happy Buddy Guy is getting a moment.
Yes.
American Treasure, Buddy Guy.
Yes.
So that's it for us this week. Tuffley, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, it is always a pleasure to have you with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where could people find more of you on the intro nets?
I say dumb things on the internet, and it's usually at JM Tuffley or at Tuffley. You can find me pretty easily.
Awesome. Rob?
You should mention your playlist, sir.
You should. You usually do.
I do these occasional things that are new music based, but also have old things and some weird thing that I found off the internet that luckily is on Spotify, so I throw that in because I fancy them. And I call it a randomizer, and it's used to be every 2 weeks or so, but now it just kind of randomly appears when I decide to do one. So some sort of schedule I will create at some point, at least monthly.
There you go. All right, Rob.
Hi. So yeah, you can find me on every Saturday on Eardrum Buzz Radio out of LA at 8 to 10 Eastern and 10 to 12 Eastern, 9 to 11 Central. That Pacific time thing throws me. But basically it's 2 shows a month. Each show repeats. It's out of LA. And then also Louder Than War Radio out of Manchester, England on Mondays from 6 to 8 Greenwich Mean Time, 12 to 2 Central, 1 to 3 Eastern. You can listen there. And then the Face Radio in Brooklyn, also on Mondays from 5 to 7 Central, 6 to 8 Eastern. All those shows are archived on those websites, The Face Radio, Louder Than War Radio, and eardrumbuzz.net. And then also you can find me on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram under my name.
Groovy tunes. All right. So go check out cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com, and check out my books and my other podcasts, which include Earth Station Trek and Doctor Who A to Z, and the documentary that I'm working on, and all kinds of other stupid shit. All right. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And I don't remember what our show is going to be, but we'll let you know at some point. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great week and keep rocking on.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping for the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.